reminds me of a game that I used to play in the basement of a stranger's house that I lived in. Let me explain to you how I got there. You see, when I was 2, I was in a lawnmower accident that caused my family to go bankrupt. I've always been costing people a lot of money. My husband can testify I'm very talented at spending. Working on it. Due to our financial situation, my folks reached out to a family that they had known for only a couple of weeks, and they opened up their heart, home, and basement to my family of 6 that was really down on their luck to move into. This is where me and my 3 siblings played Icebreaker, or Break the Ice, a game quite a bit like Jenga, except it's a board, and the cubes represent pieces of ice that you need to knock in without making the board collapse, causing the next ice age. It's interesting how comfortable we can become in some of the most uncomfortable of environments. See, for me and my siblings, this wasn't a big deal. We got to live in a stranger's house and play with their kids, and it was all fine and dandy. But for my folks, things weren't quite as sunny. Throughout my childhood, I got used to some pretty uncomfortable circumstances as well. I spent most of it in and out of the hospital, and by age 12, I had my 18th and final surgery. Imagine that this is your normal. I would go in every year having a very clear objective. I would get my surgery done, they would operate, I would recover, and I'd work as hard as I could to get back up on my feet because I was tough as nails. That's what they all called me. And then you walk into the doctor's office at 14 years old and they tell you, we don't think that you're going to need to have any more surgeries. Awesome, right? Well, you could argue that. But for someone this was a part of their identity, this was a part of my life, my entire comfort zone and everything that I worked on every year changed in an instant. So my normal was gone. Because of this, at age 15, I fell into a little bit of depression. I was seeking validation from outside sources. I wasn't comfortable with who I was, physically or emotionally. I didn't believe I was beautiful, and I used to tell myself, who could ever love a cripple? And then I took a step back. Because I was tough as nails, right? A victim was not who I was. We've all had those really great pieces of life advice that have stuck with us throughout the years. We had a fantastic piece of life advice a couple of weeks ago of taking the shots, because you miss 100% of the shots that you never take. My piece of life advice started when I was 15, but the verbalization of it didn't come until years later. And that really was, my life, regardless of my circumstances, was still my responsibility. And being a religious individual, being able to bring myself out of that situation of feeling sorry for myself, I was able to see, you know what? If I didn't have value to add here, if I wasn't meant to be in the world, then wouldn't have God just let me die? Back to a little bit of my childhood. I was flight for life to the hospital. The paramedics told my family that they didn't think I was going to make it. I had lost so much blood. But as a kid, you don't really understand what's going on, and you make the best of the circumstances you have. So for me, I became enthralled with the whole idea of recovery, and I can tell you all the different nuances about it. Crutches, okay, you can run those. Those are so much fun. They're not quite as practical if you want to transport items because both your hands are tied up, but the mobility aspect makes up for it. Walkers, on the other hand, not only are both of your hands tied down, but they're not nearly as fast as the recovery equivalent to a Ferrari. The crutch is their counterpart. I've always been a big fan of the phrase, finding problems without finding solutions is just called complaining. So what did yours truly do? I took a basket and duct taped it onto the front of my walker, and I was looking pretty fly carrying my books and stuffies around with me. Wheelchairs are awesome if you want other people to do the work, to push you around. I've always been a pretty independent person, so this wasn't the best tool for me, especially because due to its cumbersome nature, it was quite a bit tougher to maneuver. But because of how I grew up, being a victim wasn't a part of my identity, and kind of being stuck in this place that we all get to, especially during middle school time, of trying to figure out who you are, I had to really reflect in and realize that's not who I wanted to be. So my piece of life advice for you today that has made the most impact in my life is to take responsibility. Because if If you think about it, it's really easy to be a victim. That means it's not my fault. I can blame a different circumstance, I can blame another person, but that doesn't give me any power. It makes me helpless. If I can take responsibility for my life and own it, that means regardless of where I am, if I don't like my body physically or emotionally, if I don't like the opportunities that have opened up to me, if I don't like my relationships, if I don't like where I am or the person I see in the mirror, I'm the one that has the ability to change it. And while that's a scary prospect, it is also empowering, because that means at any given point, if I don't like where my life is at, then I'm the one who can make a shift. And that is the shift that I started when I was 15. And it's not overnight, because paradigms don't shift overnight. But I'm here to empower you to own your own life and be the badass that you're meant to be. Because regardless of where you are, whether you've had an accident at 2 and you grew up in the hospital, or whether you're a working mom and you're trying to provide for your children, regardless of where you are, every single person has struggles, but every person has that inner badass that they can let out. And I'm here to inspire you to do that today.